Hello Internet, my name is the Golden Stalfos, and today we're going to talk about Tankies, everyone's favorite punching bag, and also the shittiest people on Earth. The conversation around Tankies has sort of resurged recently because Russia did something shitty and evil again, and for some reason that always gets them to come out of the woodwork and start acting like Russia's the good guy, right next to all of the Republicans who act like Russia's the good guy. Weird how they always overlap. For anyone who doesn't know, maybe you're seeing this in the distant future, the current shitty thing that Russia is doing is they're invading Ukraine again. Last time, in 2015, they invaded and took over a small section, and everyone just sort of let them for some reason. You know, they did the exact same thing Hitler did, where they were like, oh, well, this area has people who are historically related to our people, and therefore we should take them as part of our ethno-state, and you should all be cool with that because ethno-states are cool, right? Right? And so they took the Crimean region, and now they're doing the exact same thing, but also claiming that the country has become overflowing with Nazis since their last invasion, and therefore has to be completely invaded. What they're referring to, of course, is one small militia group called the Azov Battalion that rose to prominence as an anti-Russia movement after Russia invaded the last time. And so, basically what they're saying is, hey, the last time we invaded these people, they started a fucking resistance. How dare they? We need to invade them again. So, fuck you, Russia. Let's just get that out of the way, really. Fuck that. Now, I don't want to make this video all about the particular instance of Russia being shitty in Ukraine because, one, it gets disproportionate news coverage. No one's really spending a lot of time talking about how fucked up the Israeli genocide against the Palestinian people is, or how fucked up the genocides in Myanmar are, or the genocide in China, or... there's a lot of war and genocide going on right now, and we're just not doing anything about it. Side note, do the people who live in what is currently called Myanmar like the name Myanmar? I know before it was called Burma when the British occupied it, and I don't know what it was called before that. And I assume that Burma isn't cool because it's a name assigned by the British, and I assume that Myanmar isn't cool because it's a name assigned by the current military dictatorship that took over after the British. And so, what do you want to be called? But yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, there's an ongoing genocide in that region, and there has been for the last 20 years, and no one's doing anything about it. It's real cool. But yeah, instead of giving disproportionate coverage to the only war that happens to involve white people at the moment, I want to talk about Tankies and why they are so shitty. So first things first, it's important to establish that Tankies are not left-leaning, they're not socialist, they're not communist. They say they are because they support governments that said they were, but those governments weren't actually socialist or communist anyway. Lenin took over Russia by claiming that he would issue communism, but he never did. What he actually did was he promised people free and open elections, then ignored the results of the elections and killed anyone who disagreed with him, and then installed himself as a dictator over a government where he proceeded to take the personal possessions of everyone and have everything become state-owned. In other words, he uses brutal force to take power, brutal force to oppress anyone who disagreed with him taking power, and more brutal force to consolidate even more power than the previous government had by taking industry away from individuals, and called that communism. And then he handed the reins over to Stalin when he died, who, just upped the reign of terror even more. The country was never communist. It never stood for communism. It never had anything to do with communism. It was just a talking point for a dictator to gain power. And the thing is, it's always been just a talking point for dictators. It doesn't matter if you're talking about Mao Zedong or Gaddafi or whatever that first guy was who started it in North Korea, or whatever that guy was who did it in Cuba. It doesn't matter. All of them. They're just dictators who use the veneer of communism to gain power and maintain power. They use populist talking points to be popular, but they don't actually give a shit about the people. They're just assholes who want power. Pure and simple. And the fucked up thing is that Tankies know that, right? Tankies know for a fact that Stalin never once in his life did anything for the people. And even if he did, that wouldn't be communism because he was a dictator. And communism is a system without a state. which isn't a system that could be functional, but whatever. How do you guarantee the protection of people's rights if there's not an organization in place to protect those rights? And what would you call that organization if not the state? But whatever. Regardless of whether or not communism is actually a good goal, none of these people ever tried to achieve it. They just said they would and then consolidated a bunch of power and money and power so that they could be rich and powerful because they wanted to be. Like, that's it. And everyone knows that, right? Like, no one is naive enough to think that Mao Zedong was actually fighting for the rights of the people he brutally conquered and slaughtered. Never forget Tiananmen Square. But there are people who are stupid enough to think that if they can convince you of that, then you'll let them be the next dictator. And that idea is really appealing to them because they're fascists and they want to be in charge. They want to have power. So they're going to mimic the talking points of these shitty people who took power and claim that these shitty people who took power are good so that they can take power and be in charge. That is the full extent of their plan. They're not thinking of anything else. They don't give a shit about you or what you want in life. They just want to use you to gain power. Now on the left, we call people with this shithead mentality who just desperately want more brutal dictators in the world Tankies. Because they're the same people who were in favor of Soviet Russia, wiping people out with tanks. And because they want a regime change through brutal violence that puts them at the top, in charge of the tanks. Because they're fascist dictators in the making. And just like how 80 years ago, a bunch of dictators used communist talking points to gain popular support in order to overthrow the governments they were living under and gain power for themselves, these people repeat their talking points, hold them up on a pedestal, and accuse you of not being sufficiently communist if you don't hold them up on a pedestal, so that they can gain power. These people are shitheads. And I wish there was more complexity to dive into about the tanky mindset. Like how someone could get grifted into something so obviously false and stupid, but they're not getting grifted into it. They're doing it on purpose because they want power. They're hoping that you'll get grifted into it. That's why they keep saying it over and over again. But you're not dumb enough to fall for that. They're not dumb enough to fall for that. They're evil enough to try and make others fall for it. So here's some tips on how you can spot a tanky. Anyone who has ever talked favorably about Gaddafi, they're a tanky, right? Like if you have some shithead out there who's saying Mao Zedong did nothing wrong, they're a fucking tanky. And also they should be shot in remembrance of all the people that Mao Zedong shot, because fuck you. If you see someone with a hammer and sickle on their profile picture, they're a fucking tanky. They're a shithead tanky, and they want to kill people. They want a brutal, violent dictatorship to come up. They're just fascists who take on leftist talking points so they can get away with being fascists. That's it. That's all there is to it. You'll probably also find them at Republican rallies because they're just right-wing nutjobs who claim to be left-wing so that they can, spread their shit in spaces around people who don't want to see that shit. Stop spreading your shit on the walls, please. It's gross. We don't like it. Now, as far as pointing out specific high-profile tankies, I don't actually know that many because I try to stay away from shitheads. The only ones I really know of are people I've seen responses to their shittiness from people I actually like. So people like Caleb Maupin, Jody Brar, Alexander Dugan, the Nosbol guy. Those are the only ones that I actually know the names of. But it's not hard to spot a tanky. They're just so hard whenever they talk about Russia invading people and being shitty, and they just can't let it go. They can't just, they have to stand Russia. Even though Russia isn't currently a communist nation, it never was, but it doesn't even currently claim to be. They just, they're just so hard at the idea of a dictator taking over territory. They have to find some way to justify it because they want to be able to do that because they're fucking shitheads. They're fascists. They want to be dictators. So of course, they're going to support dictators because they wish it was them. So yeah, be on the lookout for Tankies, and also maybe we should collectively do something about all of those ethno-states committing genocide, because, maybe ethno-states are inherently bent toward genocide, and we shouldn't have ethno-states, and we shouldn't have genocide. Maybe just a little thought about that. Oh, also Canada, that they're doing a genocide right now against the Wet'suwet'en people and also other Native American groups, and that's super fucked. Fuck you, Canada. I know that's a little rich coming from an American. Obviously, like, our country hasn't really had the best track record with that, but we're not currently doing it, as far as I'm aware. And also, I'm a Cherokee citizen, so I can absolutely say fuck you for killing Native people. There you go. So yeah, hopefully we can use this current Russian invasion to talk more about other wars and genocides and invasions that are happening around the world and fix them maybe a little bit. And hopefully you don't listen to any shithead Tankies. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next life. Laters. Hey, Endcard here. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Like, seriously though, please subscribe. I have no subscribers. It's sad. If you want to find me on other social media stuff, you can do that at the Golden Stalfos on basically everything. Links to that are in the description, as well as to some charities I like but am obviously not affiliated with. I also have a Patreon if you like me so much that you want to give me money, though obviously only do that if you have money to burn, and if you do have money to burn, they're the charities I mentioned before. They probably need it more than I do. Mad ups to my girlfriend for doing all the editing for these videos. It's a really big help. Oh, and I occasionally stream on Twitch, so follow me there so you don't miss it. I don't have a formal schedule because when I tried to have a formal schedule, I couldn't keep to it, so oh well. Okay, thanks, bye!